The power has always been an enigma surrounded by intrigues, manipulations, and deals made far from the public eye. For centuries, emperors, kings, and presidents have emerged as leadership figures, but the lingering question remains: did they truly attain power on their own, or were they carefully positioned by a hidden force? The official history tells a narrative of democratic elections and legitimate successions, but some believe that the real decisions are not made in front of the cameras, but rather in closed rooms by groups operating in the shadows. The evidence is unsettling. Networks of influence, connected bloodlines, and secret meetings between political and business figures raise suspicions about the existence of a selective society that chooses the world's rulers. Monarchies and republics, contrary to how they appear, may be interconnected by a greater and unknown purpose. But who are these supposed architects of power? And to what extent do their decisions shape the future of humanity? Welcome to another night where mysteries never sleep. I am Midnight, and this is 7 Nights. Before we begin, I'd like to ask for your help. Like the video, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It's just one click, but it makes a huge difference in helping YouTube deliver the videos to more people and allowing me to keep bringing this content to you. I'm counting on you. Let's get to the video. What you know about power may be just a fraction of the truth. We are taught that kings inherit thrones, that presidents are elected by the will of the people, and that everything follows a transparent and legitimate process. But what if I told you that there is a hidden force behind all of this? An invisible entity that, from the shadows, selects who will govern before any election or coronation even takes place. Does that sound exaggerated? Then tell me this: how do some figures with no relevant political background suddenly emerge and, within a few years, reach positions of extreme influence? How do certain families remain in power for centuries, even through revolutions and radical changes? And why do so many leaders seem to follow the same script, regardless of their ideologies? The game is much bigger than we imagine. The evidence is everywhere, but few pay attention. The Bilderberg Group, for example, brings together the most powerful figures on the planet every year. Politicians, bankers, tech magnates, and even royalty attend these meetings behind closed doors. Nothing is filmed, nothing is disclosed. Yet, years later, those who were present at these gatherings mysteriously end up assuming positions of power. Coincidence? Or a pattern that has been repeating for decades? But the game is not limited to secret meetings. There is something even more disturbing: the hidden connections between global leaders and ancient aristocratic bloodlines. Genealogical studies show that most US presidents, for example, descend from old European monarchies. Barack Obama, George W. Bush, and even Franklin Roosevelt have blood ties to royal families. Does this mean that power is something inherited? That only a select group has the right to rule? If you think this is just a curious detail, consider what it truly implies. For centuries, monarchies justified their dominance with the idea that they were chosen by God. Today, democracies sell the illusion that anyone can reach the top. But what if deep down, nothing has really changed? What if the true rulers are just different faces of the same system that has never lost control? And this is not just about politics. Who funds these multi-million-dollar campaigns? Who decides which candidates will get media attention and which will be silenced? Major corporations and international banks control sums of money that surpass the GDP of several nations. With this financial power, wouldn't it be easy to manipulate the political landscape, choosing which governments should stay and which should fall? History has already shown us what happens to those who try to break away from this script. Leaders who challenged the rules of the game mysteriously suffered coups, were targeted by scandals, or, in extreme cases, simply disappeared. Is this just a matter of bad luck, or a punishment for not following the directions of those who truly run the show behind the scenes? And those who think monarchies are exempt from this scheme are mistaken. Succession within royal houses has often followed interests that go beyond hereditary rules. Queen Elizabeth I, for example, only ascended to the throne after intense disputes involving conspiracies that have never been fully revealed. Who truly decided the future of kingdoms? Who ensured that only the chosen ones would rise to the throne? As always, money is at the center of everything. Banks that are not elected by anyone determine which countries prosper and which collapse. If a leader does not align with the interests of these entities, they quickly lose their influence. Does this mean that global politics is not decided in presidential palaces, but in luxurious offices where only a few have access? And it doesn't stop there. For decades, leaks and investigations have indicated that, in some elections, the winner is decided long before the first vote is counted. What if democracy is just a spectacle to make people believe they have the power of choice, while the real rulers are selected behind the scenes? Think about it. Why are certain topics completely ignored by the mainstream media? Why is the possibility of a greater force operating behind the curtains never seriously questioned? Could it be that the media itself is part of this game, serving to maintain the illusion that everything happens spontaneously? If this theory is real, then the leaders we see on stage are merely representatives of something much greater. They may talk about change, revolutions, and new directions, but in the end, they follow a pre-written script. But who writes this script? Who decides who will be the next ruler? What seems to be just a theory gains strength when we analyze historical patterns. The world keeps turning, new rulers emerge, empires fall, but one thing never changes. True power remains untouched, hidden where no one can see. The big question is, are we just watching the pieces move on the board, or is there an invisible force that always makes the first move? If there truly is a secret society that selects the world's rulers, then kings and presidents would not be on opposite sides, but rather connected in ways far deeper than we imagine. The idea that monarchies and democracies are entirely different systems might be nothing more than an illusion. What happens when we start drawing lines between royal families and the most influential political leaders in the world? The first striking detail is blood relations. Genealogical research shows that most U.S. presidents have direct ties to European nobility. George W. Bush, for example, is a distant cousin of Queen Elizabeth II. Barack Obama also shares ancestors with the British monarchy. And get this, a study conducted by historians traced the lineage of 43 out of the first 45 U.S. presidents and discovered that all but one were descendants of King John of England, the very same king who signed the Magna Carta in 1215. Now think about this. If the electoral system were truly open and democratic, what are the statistical chances that almost all U.S. presidents would belong to the same ancestral lineage? Is there a reason why only certain families make it to the top? And this phenomenon isn't exclusive to the U.S. Around the world, heads of state and prime ministers also share blood ties with royalty. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is a descendant of Charles II of France. French President Emmanuel Macron has distant connections to the Merovingian dynasty, one of Europe's oldest. Did these leaders rise to power on their own, or are they part of a lineage that has been carefully preserved for generations? Looking to the past, we see that royal dynasties have always sought to maintain their dominance. For centuries, arranged marriages ensured that power never left the same families. But what if this practice never truly ended? What if, instead of marriages, the new way to keep control is to infiltrate their descendants into modern governments? Certain organizations seem to reinforce this theory. The Bilderberg Group, for example, frequently invites royalty and emerging politicians to its secret meetings. And curiously, years later, many of these attendees end up in positions of extreme importance in their countries. Does this mean a selection process is happening behind closed doors, away from public scrutiny? And what if this selection isn't just political but symbolic? Some believe that monarchies never truly lost their real power. They simply changed the way they control things. While kings and queens today hold seemingly decorative roles, their descendants continue to influence governments and corporations worldwide. After all, a king no longer needs a crown to rule if he can do so through banks, institutions, and strategic partnerships. The nobility's influence is evident even in how world leaders are treated. Notice that, throughout history, very few high-ranking political figures have been tried or punished for serious crimes. Coups happen, governments fall, but most of these figures simply fade away from the political scene without major consequences. Could there be a protective network ensuring that certain individuals are never truly held accountable? And why, even in modern times, do so many presidents and prime ministers maintain extremely close relationships with royal families? Is it merely diplomatic protocol, or is there a deeper connection we are not aware of? If there truly is a hidden link between royalty and politics, then the world may be governed by a system far older than we think. Democracy might just be a smokescreen for something that never really changed. And if that's the case, then the most important question arises: who is already being prepared to rule in the future? Have you ever had the feeling that the world's biggest decisions are made long before any election, coup, or coronation? As if everything is just a well-rehearsed play, where the true directors never appear on stage. Well, there are indications that a select group of people not only predicts the future of global politics, but actually shapes it. These figures are not presidents, kings, or prime ministers. They don't give fiery speeches to crowds or participate in televised debates. In fact, their names rarely appear in the newspapers. But who are they? And more importantly, how do they remain in the shadows while moving the pieces of the global chessboard? Let's start with the obvious. Power has always been concentrated in the hands of the few. It doesn't matter the political system, era, or culture. But there's a difference between influence and absolute control. And this is where organizations like the Bilderberg Group, the Trilateral Commission, and the Council on Foreign Relations come in. Officially, these are just forums for diplomatic and economic discussions. But if that were true, why do all their meetings take place behind closed doors, with no records, no journalists, and no accountability? And here's the strangest part. Why do so many of the people who attend these meetings end up in powerful positions shortly afterward? Bill Clinton attended the Bilderberg meeting in 1991. 1 year later, he became President of the United States. Emmanuel Macron was there in 2014. By 2017, he held France's highest office. Mario Draghi, who for years led the European Central Bank, was involved before becoming Italy's Prime Minister. And the list goes on. Coincidence? Or a pattern that has been repeating for decades? If these gatherings are really just about exchanging ideas and networking, how do we explain the fact that certain individuals emerge from them directly into top positions of power? Could Bilderberg be some sort of selection process, where only those most aligned with this elite's interests can advance? And who is behind this process? The names that always come up when discussing behind-the-scenes global influence belong to the same families. The Rockefellers, who dominated the US economy for over a century. The Rothschilds, whose banking empire financed kings and entire governments. And now, in modern times, tech magnates who control data valuable enough to dictate the fate of any nation. But let's go deeper. True power requires absolute secrecy. And the best way to hide is to make sure no one believes you exist. That's why, whenever someone mentions this invisible elite, the immediate response is conspiracy theory. Why is it that these gatherings and these families are never seriously investigated? Could it be that the media itself is part of this game, ensuring that the public never looks in the right direction? Now, an even more intriguing question. If there really is a club of the chosen, how does one get in? Is being a billionaire enough? Or is there something more? Some believe that, beyond wealth, lineage is key. And this would explain why so many rulers share blood ties with old royal houses. Ruling wouldn't be something earned, but rather an inherited right carefully preserved. And what if this selection isn't just political but symbolic? The signs are everywhere, from occult symbols embedded in government buildings to gestures repeatedly used by world leaders. The pyramid, the all-seeing eye, symbols tied to ancient secret societies, are now stamped on financial institutions, corporate headquarters, and even national flags. Are these mere coincidences, or a silent message meant for those who know how to interpret it? And if all this is real, the inevitable question is, what does this group truly want? Do they merely seek to keep power within a closed circle, or is there a larger goal? Some believe that the world is being pushed towards a single global government, a system where political borders are merely decorative and all decisions are made by an invisible council. If this theory is true, then elections, economic crises, and even wars might just be tools used to steer humanity in that direction. And the most astonishing part, whenever a leader emerges with ideas that go against this system, their political career is instantly destroyed. Scandals surface out of nowhere. Opposition movements suddenly gain strength. The media turns against them in the blink of an eye. Is this just coincidence, or is the elite removing yet another unwanted piece from the board? The mainstream media rarely touches on this subject, and when they do, they treat it as a joke, an absurd fantasy that shouldn't be taken seriously. But why so much effort to discredit something that supposedly doesn't exist? If there's nothing to hide, why the absolute silence surrounding what really happens at these meetings? If there truly is a group that selects the world's next leaders, then that means the future is already being decided behind the scenes, long before any election takes place. But the real question is, who will be the next chosen one? Few elections in modern history have been as chaotic and unpredictable as the one in 2016. Donald Trump, a billionaire businessman with no political background, defeated powerful opponents and won the presidency of the United States against all odds. The media didn't believe in his victory. The polls predicted his defeat. But somehow he reached the top. The question many still ask today is, did this happen by chance, or was it planned? To understand this, we need to take a few steps back. If there truly is a group that selects world leaders before elections even happen, then Trump would have gone through the same process, right? After all, he has always moved within elite financial and political circles. For decades, he attended high-influence events, was friends with major business tycoons, and associated with figures linked to global power. Was his rise truly a shock to the system, or was it all part of a bigger script? Looking at his trajectory, there are curious details. Trump frequented social circles that included members of the Bilderberg Group, billionaires controlling banks and media, and even royalty. His connections with construction moguls and the financial sector placed him, since the 1980s, within a global network of influence. But then, if he was already in that space, why was his presidency treated as a threat to the system? The most intriguing part of this story is that, unlike other traditional politicians, Trump seemed to break the rules. His rhetoric was anti-establishment, he openly criticized the media, and he challenged groups that supposedly always had influence over US governments. But does this mean he was truly out of these hidden forces' control? Or could it have been a calculated move, a strategy to make the public believe there was a real disruption in the system? Another suspicious point is how his victory immediately triggered a fierce reaction from the major centers of power. After his election, the media launched a massive opposition campaign. Leaks began to surface, investigations were opened, and multiple impeachment attempts were conducted throughout his term. Sounds familiar? Many leaders throughout history have faced similar attacks when they opposed higher interests. But was Trump really fighting this elite, or was it all just one big theater performance? There's more. If we analyze the inner workings of his administration, we'll see that he surrounded himself with figures who, curiously, were already well known for their involvement in global influence groups. Bankers tied to the Rothschild dynasty, former Goldman Sachs executives, high-ranking military officials, all of them played roles in his government. And this raises another question. Was he really breaking away from the system, or was he just a new face for the same structure of power? Then comes the unlikely man factor. Often, when people start distrusting the system, a wild card is thrown into the game to restore public confidence in politics. A leader who appears independent, defiant, against all odds. But in the end, does he really control the game? Or is he just another player being moved on the board? Looking at history, this strategy has been used before. Presidents who rose as rebels promising radical change often ended up becoming part of the same system they claimed to fight. Does this mean Trump was chosen to play a role in this grand illusion? And here comes the most unsettling question. If his rise was allowed by this elite, what was really behind that decision? Was it a way to restructure the system, test new forms of control, or even prepare the public for something bigger that has yet to happen? Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain. Trump proved that global politics is not as predictable as many believe. But does that mean he truly broke the system, or did he just follow a path that had already been mapped out? After all, was he an accident in the game, or a carefully planned piece? Many believe that a secret society chooses the world's leaders and leaves subtle marks for those who know where to look. Symbols, gestures, numbers, and even specific events seem to follow an enigmatic pattern. But are these signs mere coincidences, or deliberate messages left intentionally? Since ancient times, power has always been tied to rituals and symbolism. Pharaohs, kings, and emperors used emblems to assert their authority. Today, things are no different. Look at the most important government buildings in the world. Many of them feature architectural details that link to secret societies, such as Freemasonry and the Illuminati. Pyramids, all-seeing eyes, obelisks, and numerological references are scattered across capitals and power institutions. But why? And it doesn't stop there. World leaders themselves often use peculiar gestures during speeches and public events. The horn sign, the Masonic handshake, and other discrete symbols appear repeatedly in key moments. Is this elite sending messages to its members, or simply playing with our perception? One of the most intriguing examples of this is the Bilderberg meetings. Very few images of these gatherings are ever released, but when they are, there is always a strange formality in how participants greet and interact. Are these merely social protocols, or secret codes exchanged between those who really run the world? And when talking about hidden signs, we can't ignore their presence in historical events. Wars, economic crises, and political shifts often seem to follow a logic that defies coincidence. The number 33, for example, frequently appears during moments of great global impact. Is this just random chance, or is there a connection to Freemasonry, where this number holds deep significance? And the most intriguing part, even entertainment seems filled with references to this alleged elite. Movies, music videos, and even major brand commercials frequently display symbols related to secret societies. Is this just an aesthetic choice, or could Hollywood and the music industry be, in some way, connected to this system? The idea that these hidden messages are just coincidences becomes harder to believe when we realize how often they repeat themselves. If none of this meant anything, why do these images keep appearing in such strategic places? Perhaps the truth is scarier than we imagine. If there really is a group manipulating the fate of nations, then they no longer need to hide completely. On the contrary, they may be leaving their marks in plain sight, knowing that most people will never notice. And if that's the case, one final unsettling question remains. Are these symbols just traces of a silent influence, or are they preparing us for something even bigger that we don't yet understand? What if everything we are witnessing today, elections, crises, wars, and even technological advancements, had already been planned long ago? If there truly is an invisible elite controlling who rises to power, then the future may not be a matter of choice, but rather the execution of a script that was written behind the scenes. Think about it. How many times have we heard that a great change is coming? A new world, a great transformation, a fresh start? These expressions are not new, and always seem to appear when decisive moments are about to unfold. What few realize is that these changes almost never happen spontaneously. They follow a pattern, a cycle that repeats itself generation after generation. The most intriguing part is that certain names begin to be groomed for leadership long before they even enter politics. Young billionaires, members of influential families, and even celebrities with political speeches suddenly emerge, gaining public trust overnight. But did they really get there through merit, or were they always destined to take those positions? And it doesn't stop there. If a predefined plan is truly being followed, it means we might already be able to predict who the next global leaders will be. The clues are everywhere. Children of former presidents who suddenly begin appearing in the media. Young entrepreneurs who are labeled as tech geniuses and, within just a few years, gain influence over entire governments. Even royalty members who officially lost political power but continue to be among the world's most influential figures. If these patterns have repeated for centuries, the question we need to ask is, who is the next chosen one? Has the next great leader already been selected? Is the next outsider, who will supposedly challenge the system, already being prepared? The patterns are right in front of us. The players change, but the board remains the same. Leaders come and go, but true power never shifts hands. What appears to be a natural sequence of events may, in reality, be the execution of a meticulously crafted plan by those who operate from the shadows. With every election, every crisis, and every new leader introduced to the world, one question lingers. Did this person truly reach the top on their own? Or were they placed there? The invisible elite doesn't need to act in plain sight. Their control manifests in the details, in secret meetings, hidden symbols, and names that appear out of nowhere, only to rule entire nations within a few years. With each generation, new faces emerge, but the script remains the same. So, the final question remains. Do we still have real choices, or are we simply watching history unfold according to a plan written long ago? This story is just one piece of the puzzle, and one day, perhaps you'll see the entire picture. If this made you think, subscribe, like the video. It helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share. After all, more voices mean more discoveries.